How waiting smartly is the key to getting your ex back. Hello there, I'm Coach Abby. Thank you so much for joining me once again here on Love Advice TV. Love Advice TV is a channel created uniquely for you to assist you in navigating through any relationship challenges. So, today we're going to dive into a concept that is, it's often misunderstood actually. It's overlooked, and many times we even resist it. And it's called waiting smartly, specifically during no contact. Most people after a breakup feel that urge to do something immediately. And what I mean by that is like we need to justify our actions. We need to send messages. We need to explain. We need to plead. We need to convince them. We need to fight for another chance. But what if I told you that sometimes the most powerful move you can make isn't chasing, but waiting? And it's not about waiting, not passive waiting. It's not about waiting in despair. It's about waiting smartly. And smartly means it's a way that turns time and space into your greatest allies. So hopefully by the end of this video, you'll be understanding how waiting smartly creates the exact conditions that makes your ex more likely to return, and more importantly, why it transforms you into someone they can't help but be drawn back to. We talk about having them come back, but you don't want them to come back to that old you. You need to be the new, transformed you. And that's where you have the control, because you do have the ability to change. When a breakup happens, remind yourself, most people respond immediately out of panic. So I don't want you to feel guilty or shamed if you've done everything that you're not supposed to. But moving forward after this video, you should be able to think twice by realizing how it is so counterproductive when we do react out of emotional havoc. So the pursuit, the call, the texting, the begging, all this situation to reason with him, what it does, what it doesn't do actually, it doesn't create attraction. Actually, it often kills it. We think that they're waiting for our response. They're waiting for us to justify. No, they're not. We fall into the explanation trap. You believe that if you could just explain yourself better, they would change their mind. But breakups aren't intellectual decisions. They're emotional ones. We have what we call the overexposure effect. When you try too hard to stay in contact, you remove all mystery. Familiarity it leads to so much disinterest because, we remove the desire component from it. Think of it like pulling on a rope in a tug of war. The harder you pull, the more they pull back. And this is so important to remind yourself before you reach out, before you start texting, before you start explaining. Smart waiting flips the dynamic. Instead of tightening the rope, what you do is you release it. And suddenly, they lose the resistancy they were using to pull away. And that's so important. So then what really, you might be asking yourself, is smart waiting? Is it just detaching? Not necessarily. Let's be very clear. Smart waiting does not mean doing nothing. That's not. It does not mean waiting on the couch, staring at your phone, hoping they'll come back. Smart waiting is active and intentional. It really means creating space. You give them breathing room so the emotional dust can settle. You start recentering on yourself. You use this time to rebuild your confidence and identity. It's important to use strategic timing. You allow attraction to regrow naturally before reconnecting. You have to, that little space in between keeps them curious. All of a sudden they're thinking, I wonder what's going on. I wonder if they still look so great, or whatever, because they might not like you as a person, but they also at one time fell in love with you and found you extremely sexy and extremely inviting. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been with you. So here's a secret. Your ex can only feel you change if you actually created the change. So smart waiting is that period in which that change can happen. So instead of thinking of this time as lost weeks or lost months, or he didn't reach out, or she's been gone for a month, or she's been this, think of it as an investment window. You gain more interest every day. Every day you spend waiting smartly adds interest to the future outcomes. Simple as that. By the way, if you're unsure about whether you stand, as far as they're concerned, as someone valuable to pursue, to check up on, or I don't know what steps you need to do next, I certainly invite you to take that free assessment questionnaire we have below. It's designed specifically for you to help you determine what your current position is. Because remember, these videos are very generic. And when you look in and you are able to see where you stand, it's the best actions for your specific situation will be highlighted. So, remember that this video is just a way of bringing to light those things that you should concentrate on specifically during these uncertain moments so that we don't make the same mistakes. Because many times after a breakup, we add insult to injury not by default. It's just we don't stop and pause and think. So I think it's important to think about a little bit about the psychology of absence, to understand why waiting smartly works. So simply put, it's because of how the human mind reacts to absence, specifically the effect of scarcity, of memory bias, and trigger of curiosity on our thought process. You may be questioning, Abby, what do you mean by this? I always get this, Abby, what do you mean by this? But it's really, we need to look closely at different components and look at them individually so we can understand them. Let's talk about the scarcity effect. When something is less available, it feels more valuable, not only in relationships, in anything. We want to buy a car. We look at it in the parking lot and we turn around and it's not there. And all of a sudden we want it more than ever. We're willing to pay full price for it. Your absence raises your perceived value in a relationship as well. Then we have what I refer to as memory bias. So with time, the sharp edges of conflict, it fades. It's interesting. Go to a funeral. People usually say, oh my God, she was such a wonderful person, or he was such a wonderful this, or he was, and they weren't. And they weren't because instinctively we want to think the best of someone. And I'm not saying that they were or not. Let's not go into that topic. But most of the time we tend to think of the positive influence and positive memories that people leave behind. And those are the ones that rise to the surface. So distance rewrites memory in your favor. It really does. Finally, let's touch a bit about curiosity trigger. So when you disappear, your ex wonders, what are they doing? Don't you wonder what they're doing because they're disappeared? They will also be wondering. And, it goes on to even, how are they handling this? Are they with someone else? Or do they care? Have I lost my place in the pedestal of their lives? Remember, curiosity creates attraction. And this is why constantly contacting your ex doesn't work. It doesn't work. You need to remember that the more we contact them, specifically right after a breakup, it keeps that conflict alive. And we're trying so hard to put a boundary, a wall between the conflict moments and the wonderful moments that we shared. You see, waiting allows memory and curiosity to become your ally if you allow it. if you allow certain times to diffuse the conflict and allow those wonderful moments to surface. So here are what I refer to as my 5 practical steps. And I suggest this typically in my coaching sessions. And I think it's important that we take them individually or collectively, depending on your situation, okay? So one of them, obviously, we all know, refers to commit to the no contact. Now, once again, no contact is not a one-size-fits-all. It's something that I'll discuss in a little bit, but it really isn't. But if it does apply to your situation, this isn't silence as punishment. It's silence as respect. It protects your dignity and gives them space to feel your absence. Then we look to redirect your focus. Pour energy into self-improvement, fitness, hobbies, passions, whatever. But make sure you find, you fill that space with something that brings out the light in you. Not only does this rebuild you, it subtly signals growth. Try rebuilding your social energy. You know, when friends and family or social media reflect your positive changes, you know, it often reaches your ex indirectly. And what I mean by that, do you overextend on posting? Not so fast. That's a whole different subject altogether. But when it is there, make sure you are conveying that you are in a good place. It's not a place to trigger jealousies or make-believe situations. No, it's a change to convey your changes, your authentic changes, and that's so important. And you know, you number 4, I like to refer to it as a reflect without obsession. You know, you can journal about the relationship. It's normal, you know. You can go back and look at pictures and you can see all kinds of, you know, text threads between each other. But it's not to wallow. What you need to do is you need to identify, use them almost as a roadmap to identify what must change for reconciliation to succeed. Because most of the times, the breakup had its signals. It does. It just doesn't come across. It just doesn't all of a sudden show up on us, you know. And finally, set a time frame. Smart waiting isn't endless. Give yourself a period, okay? And again, this is very generic. I don't know what your situation is, but probably 30, 60 days, you know, to fully commit to your transformation, not theirs, but to your transformation before deciding your next move. Every one of these steps plant a seed of attraction. Some of us need to use all of them. Some of us can pick and choose. And yes, I know firsthand that deciding on which one is best for you can feel overwhelming, especially if you feel like you're struggling to apply any of them. And you say, Abby, but how do I do this? You know, I always like to remind you, you are not alone. You don't have to go through this journey alone. I invite you to consider working with me on a one-to-one basis. I mean, if you think about it, in our private session, we'll take a deep dive into your unique situation. We'll uncover the exact patterns that may have led to the breakup, which are very different than your friends or anybody else's, or even the things we read about. Every relationship is unique, and therefore we can create a step-by-step strategy tailored just for you. Think of it as having, once again, that roadmap designed significantly for your unique situation, one designed to maximize your chances of reattracting your ex back. So when you're ready, it doesn't have to be right now, just please don't hesitate to consider booking that one-on-one session. And if not, find yourself a sounding board. Please find someone where you can throw back different ideas and see where you stand. And, you know, I think most of us, including myself, it's always a pleasure to help guide a close friend, a colleague, a family member, a client through this process. You know, you may wonder, if I'm not around them, Abby, how will they notice any change? And this is very typical because sometimes that no contact is no contact. Sometimes we're blocked. Sometimes we block. Sometimes, I mean, there's many different components to the no contact. But here's where I strongly believe that once again, the law of attraction plays a significant role as it refers to our energetic shift. You know, the tone of your future communication, lighter, calmer, more confident, instantly feels different. And not a communication only with them, but with everyone around you. You start feeling empowered. You start feeling in control. You know, there are social ripples as well with friends, families, or even, subtle updates on social media that you have where you can picture your growth. And interesting enough is what I refer to as a subconscious recall. When they think of you, their mind overlays the new energy you embody now. You know, energy attracts energy. It's quantum physics. They think of you, your new energy is what envelopes you. It embodies you. That's what they'll be receiving. That's why sometimes the next says, I don't know why, but something feels different about you. I needed to reach out. I needed to see what's going on. And it's not that they saw you physically or you met with them or you called them. It's all of a sudden they felt you from afar, energetically, positively. It's so important, because you have to remember that change doesn't require physical presence to be felt. It sort of radiates. It's interesting when we think of someone for a while and all of a sudden they reach out. Do you really honestly believe it's coincidence? I don't. I truly feel that there was an energetic meeting of the minds of sorts, and that's why they reached out. When we walk into a place and we want to see something on sale and it hasn't been on sale, and all of a sudden we see it on sale, we say, whoa. So all of these things have a lot to do with our energy, because our energy transmits signals and it also radiates it. It also brings it to us. It's also able to accept it. So sometimes we know when our exes are going to reach out. It doesn't even take us by surprise. And it's not vanity, and it's not just, being over self-confident. There's just something. So never underestimate the importance of being sensitive to your energetic frequency. So as we reach the end of this video, I'd like you to please remember that waiting smartly is not about doing nothing. It's about doing the right things at the right time. When you stop chasing, when you allow time to heal, when you focus on becoming stronger, your absence becomes magnetic. Your ex begins to feel your shift. You've got to trust in this. And they start to wonder if letting you go was a mistake. Interesting enough, the bad memories are usually replaced, as we mentioned beforehand, with good memories. Was it a mistake to let them go? Was it premature to break up? And believe in the process, trust in yourself, become that best version of yourself, and know, as you know, that smart waiting makes a lot of sense. So thank you once again for joining me today. And please don't forget to like and subscribe for more tips on personal growth, mending broken relationships, and everything and anything in between. Until next time, I'm Coach Abby.